Imagine waking one morning with a quiet tremor in the soul, a realization rising like dawn behind your eyes. The life you have been living may not be entirely your own. The choices you defend, the beliefs you speak, even the desires that burn in your chest, what if they were shaped not from the deep root of your being, but carved by the hands of expectation, habit, and unspoken pressure? What if the self you present to the world is more costume than truth? We live in a world eager to tell us who to be. Long before we recognize our own voice, we are handed identities, roles, and rules. We are praised when we fit them and quieted when we do not. Over time, we learn to adapt, not to flourish, but to be accepted. And slowly the distance widens between who we are and who we perform. There comes a moment for every honest soul when the performance grows heavy, when the laughter feels rehearsed, when the decisions feel foreign, when the mirror shows not a companion, but a stranger with familiar eyes. This is the beginning of awakening, not a crisis, but a summons. The deepest journey in life is the one taken inward. To know yourself is not merely to list your traits. It is to uncover the architecture of your being, the forces that shaped you, the fears that guided you, the desires that moved you even when you did not understand them. Most people never take this journey. They live entire lives wearing a mask they forgot was a mask. They confuse approval with fulfillment, acceptance with love, and routine with purpose. They survive, but they do not awaken. To awaken is to sense the cage before you see the bars. Remember your earliest years. You laughed without hesitation. You wept without shame. You dreamed boldly, spoke freely, reached for life with both hands. But the world is quick to correct the unfiltered spirit. Be realistic. Don't be so emotional. Act like everyone else. So we learn to hide the parts of ourselves that others did not understand. We learn to wear what philosophers once called the persona, the face we present to the world. It is useful. It allows us to belong. But when we cling too tightly to it, we forget that the persona is not the self. We begin to believe the role is the reality, and the deeper, truer self retreats into silence. But silence does not mean absence. What is pushed down does not disappear. It gathers strength in the dark. It shapes our reactions, our fears, our judgments. This hidden realm is the shadow, not evil, not wrong, but the collection of everything we were taught to hide. Have you ever felt sudden irritation towards someone? A flash of jealousy, resentment, or judgment with no clear cause? These moments are not accidents. They are signals. They are the shadow speaking. We dislike in others what we are unwilling to accept in ourselves. We recoil at honesty when we are busy pretending. We resent confidence when we feel small. We judge ambition when we fear our own potential. The shadow does not reveal what is wrong with others. It reveals what is unfinished within us. And here lies the quiet truth of the soul. The parts of yourself you have avoided are not your enemies. They are the lost pieces of your wholeness. To find yourself, you must be willing to face yourself. This is not a gentle task. It requires honesty, patience, and an undivided courage. To look into your own depths without flinching, to admit the fears you carry, the dreams you buried, the wounds you never named, is to reclaim the parts of you that were stolen by expectation. Yet the reward is profound. When you acknowledge your hidden self, your reactions soften, your decisions sharpen, your presence deepens. You begin to act not out of fear or habit, but from a place of inner steadiness. You stop needing permission. You stop chasing validation. You stop apologizing for existing. You begin to live from the inside outward. This is the true beginning of life, not the day you were born, but the day you begin to claim your own soul. We are not born fragmented. We become fragmented through lessons of reward and rejection. A child told to quiet their joy learns to hide delight. A child mocked for tears learns to bury grief. A child praised only for achievement learns that worth must be earned instead of inherent. Layer by layer, the world teaches us to trade authenticity for approval. Yet approval purchased this way is always fragile. It can be withdrawn the moment you stop performing. So the persona becomes armor, but armor is heavy. It keeps danger out, but it also keeps the self in. There comes a time when the armor no longer protects, it suffocates, and in that suffocation, the soul begins to whisper. Sometimes as restlessness, sometimes as despair, sometimes as a quiet ache you cannot name. These are not weaknesses. They are invitations, but to follow them, you must become still. Stillness is the doorway to the self. Without distraction, without noise, without performance, you meet the awareness that has always been waiting. It will show you the dreams you abandoned, the strength you denied, the grief you buried, the love you withheld. And slowly you realize that nothing within you was ever the enemy, only misunderstood. The shadow is not darkness. It is unlit potential. The persona is not false. It is simply incomplete. You are not broken. You are unfinished. This realization is your first breath of freedom. For once, you see the architecture of the self, not as fixed but as expansive. You understand that you are allowed to rebuild, allowed to unlearn, allowed to return to yourself. But returns have a cost. When you remove the mask, some will not know how to face you. When you speak your truth, some will turn away. When you stop performing, some will lose interest. It is inevitable. But what is lost in this process was never truly yours. What remains is real. Presence, peace, identity, not inherited or imposed, but remembered. This is the journey we now step toward. The unraveling of the conditioned self, the meeting of the shadow, a reunion with the original voice within. Take a breath. There is no rush. The self does not reveal itself under pressure. It opens when you are ready, when you are honest, when you are willing to listen. You are not behind. You are not late. Your life has led you to this threshold. Every ache and longing was preparation. Now we begin to walk with intention. To continue this journey inward, we must now look at the forces moving beneath your conscious awareness. Your identity is not a single fixed shape. It is a constellation of impulses, instincts, fears, memories, and ancient patterns you did not choose, but inherited. Before you ever spoke your first word, the psyche was already forming itself through layers of influence older than your name. There are patterns that live within every human being, patterns that appear in myths, dreams, religion, and the stories we tell across generations. These patterns are not taught. They are remembered. They are not invented. They are discovered. They are the archetypes, forms of human experience older than any civilization. And these archetypes are not just symbols in stories. They live inside you. There is the hero, the part of you that seeks purpose and growth. The shadow, the part of you that holds the truths you avoid. The sage, the part of you that knows without explanation. The child, the part of you that remembers wonder. The warrior, the part of you that stands firm in danger. The lover, the part of you capable of deep connection. These are not characters in a myth. They are voices within your soul, each calling to you in different seasons of life. When you feel the pull to step beyond who you have been, that is the hero stirring. When you feel confronted by your own fears, that is the shadow rising. When you feel guided by an intuition you cannot explain, that is the sage whispering. You are not a single self, you are a symphony, but a symphony without a conductor becomes noise. This is why so many feel lost. So many feel conflicted. So many feel divided within themselves. Different parts of the psyche pull in opposing directions. And without awareness, the strongest impulse wins, not the truest one. To find yourself, you must learn to meet these inner figures, not to suppress them, but to listen. Consider the hero within you. This archetype calls you to rise above the life handed to you. It whispers that there must be more, that growth is not a luxury, but a demand of the soul. This is why comfort never satisfies for long. Because the hero does not seek ease, it seeks meaning. But the hero can only rise when the shadow has been acknowledged. The shadow contains everything you avoid, your fears, your jealousy, your desires that contradict your image of yourself. Most people spend a lifetime trying to outrun these parts of themselves. but what you run from grows stronger. Avoidance is nourishment for fear. The shadow does not dissolve under denial. It dissolves under truth. The moment you admit what you fear, it weakens. The moment you acknowledge what you desire, it becomes conscious. The moment you name what hurts, the wound begins to heal. Facing the shadow is not self-criticism. It is self-respect, because to ignore your hidden self is to declare that parts of you are unworthy of love, and nothing inside you was created to be unloved. But there is another pair of forces shaping your life, quieter but just as powerful, the inward masculine and the inward feminine. Not gender, not personality, energy. One is firmness, direction, structure, the part that says, I will. One is intuition, depth, feeling, the part that says, I know. To be whole is to let these two energies speak to one another. When your inner masculine is rejected, you doubt yourself. You hesitate, you defer. You stay silent when your truth is burning inside you. When your inner feminine is rejected, you disconnect from your feelings. You become hardened, mechanical, unable to rest, unable to receive love. Wholeness requires both strength and surrender. Will and wonder, purpose and presence, a self fully alive is not one who conquers emotion, but one who can feel deeply without being controlled by the feeling. A self fully alive is not one who forces life, but one who walks forward with clarity, not haste. The modern world teaches us to specialize in one part of ourselves and neglect the others. We are taught to be productive, but not present, confident but never vulnerable, logical but never intuitive. This is why the soul grows restless, because it did not come here to be half awake. It came to live with both clarity and depth, to act and to feel, to stand firm and to bend like water when needed. There is a reason silence feels uncomfortable for most. Silence is where you meet the self. Without distraction, without applause, without noise, you see what remains. And what remains is the truth. The unconscious does not speak in sentences. It speaks in tension, in longing, in dreams, in the moment your chest tightens when you pretend to be someone you're not, in this sudden emotion that rises without explanation, in the dreams that visit you again and again. These are not accidents. They are messages. The deeper self is always speaking. The question is whether you have learned to hear it. Modern life trains us to drown these messages. We scroll instead of reflect. We speak instead of listen. We run instead of feel. But the moment you stop running, something extraordinary happens. The unconscious begins to open. Not violently, but gradually, like a door that has always been unlocked. And you begin to see patterns, how every relationship has taught you the same lesson in different forms. How every fear you carry leads to the same wound. How every longing points toward the same forgotten truth. Life is not random. Your psyche is not chaotic. It is speaking in symbols, in repetition, in echoes you were never taught to translate. But once you learn to read these patterns, the world inside you comes alive. The hero learns to walk beside the shadow, not against it. The inward masculine makes decisions without aggression. The inward feminine feels deeply without drowning. You stop seeking perfection. You begin seeking integration. And integration is the heart of becoming whole, not rejecting your past, not erasing your pain, not pretending you are finished, but acknowledging every part of yourself with dignity. This is individual wholeness, not the denial of imperfection, but the embrace of depth. You do not find yourself by building a new identity from scratch. You find yourself by remembering the one that has always been there. Beneath the masks, beneath the fear, beneath the roles you learned to play. And now comes the most difficult truth, to remember yourself. You must be willing to release the version of you that others admire, the one who fit in, the one who pleased, the one who did not cause disruption, the one who stayed quiet to be loved. That version of you was necessary. It protected you. It helped you survive. But it is no longer enough. A life lived in truth requires courage, not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices. To speak when your voice trembles. To rest when the world demands performance. To say no when your soul whispers no. To walk away when staying would cost your peace. This is how selfhood is reclaimed, not in a single moment, but in 1,000 small refusals to betray yourself. And as you do, life begins to shift, not suddenly, but unmistakably. Conversations feel different. Relationships rearrange themselves. Your desires sharpen. Your presence deepens. The world responds to you with new eyes because you are no longer shaped by the outside, but anchored from within. This is not the end of the journey. It is the midpoint. Now we approach the deepest truth of all, the truth that dissolves the illusion of separation and reveals the vastness of who you truly are. And once you understand this, life can never return to what it was. There is a final threshold in the journey of the self. Everything we have explored so far, the mask, the shadow, the inner archetypes, leads to this realization. Your identity is not a fixed object, but a living movement. The self you believe yourself to be is not the entirety of who you are. It is only a doorway, a beginning, a single note in a far greater composition. Most people cling to the ego because it feels solid, familiar, measurable. It says, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I believe. But the ego speaks from fear. It fears the unknown. It fears change. It fears its own dissolution. The deeper self does not fear. It expands. It knows that growth does not destroy you. It reveals you. But for this revelation to occur, the old self must loosen its grip. You must be willing to surrender the identity that has defined you, even if it has protected you. You must be willing to step into unfamiliar inner territory. The self expands in silence, in the stillness where distractions fade and the external voices quiet. You begin to feel the pulse of your own existence. It is subtle at first, like the faint echo of footsteps in a distant hall. But as you give it space, that inner presence grows. It gains warmth, gravity, depth. You begin to sense that you are held by something larger than thought, something steady, something unbreakable. This presence has been with you your entire life. You felt it when you were young, before the world taught you to doubt yourself. You felt it in moments of awe, when beauty overtook you and time seemed to pause. You felt it in grief, when everything else fell away and only truth remained. You felt it in love, when your boundaries melted and the universe moved through you. This presence is the self beneath the self, not the personality, not the achievements, not the story, but the consciousness that experiences them. To find yourself is not to create a new identity. It is to step back far enough to see that identity was never the full picture. Your thoughts are not you. Your emotions are not you. Your fears are not you. They are weather patterns, passing, changing, temporary. You are the sky beneath them. When you realize this, something extraordinary happens. The ego no longer needs to defend itself. You do not need to prove anything, justify anything, or explain yourself to be valid. You do not need to cling to roles, titles, or opinions. You do not need to convince the world of your worth. Your worth is not external. It is inherent. The world cannot give it. The world cannot take it. This is the freedom that waits behind every fear you have ever held. But to reach it, you must be willing to walk through a sacred kind of loneliness. When you begin living from the deeper self, some people will not understand you. They may say you have changed. They may call you distant, cold, unrecognizable. They will not see that you have not withdrawn from life. You have withdrawn from illusion. This loneliness is not a void. It is a clearing, a purification, a preparation. It is the silence in which your true voice returns. Most people never reach this stage because they mistake discomfort for danger. They feel the loneliness and run back to old identities, old patterns, old attachments. But if you endure that silence, if you hold your center when the old world falls away, something opens, clarity descends. You begin to see your relationships not through need, but through truth. You begin to choose people who nourish your spirit, not just your ego. You stop chasing attention and begin valuing presence. You stop craving validation and begin honoring alignment. You learn the difference between connection and attachment. Attachment grasps. Connection expands. Attachment says, I need you to fill what I lack. Connection says, we grow together, not by possession, but by recognition. Only a self who has met its own depth can love without losing itself. And now we come to the greatest secret of inner strength. You do not need the world to understand you in order to be whole. You do not need applause to feel complete. You do not need to explain your evolution to anyone. The self is not something you perform. It is something you inhabit. Walk into a room with your inner world intact, and others will feel it. Not because of what you say, but because of what you do not need to say. There is a quiet confidence that comes from being rooted in your own presence. It does not ask for attention. It does not chase recognition. It simply exists. And existence itself becomes influence. The person who has found themselves does not dominate others. They do not hide. They do not shrink. They do not bend for approval. They simply stand, unmoved by praise, unshaken by rejection, untouched by noise. This is not detachment. It is sovereignty. To be sovereign over yourself is to no longer be ruled by impulse, conditioning, or fear. It is to live with deliberate presence and unwavering clarity. It is to choose your life from within rather than inherit it from without. So now the question rests before you. Will you return to the mask, the script, the borrowed identity? Or will you continue? Will you allow your old self to dissolve so that something truer, deeper, and infinitely more powerful can emerge? This is not a small decision. It is not made once. It is made every day. Each time you choose honesty over performance. Each time you choose stillness over noise. Each time you choose courage over comfort. Each time you choose yourself. Life does not truly begin until you do. You are not here to be who you were told to be. You are not here to repeat the patterns you inherited. You are not here to dim your own fire to keep others warm. You are here to awaken, to remember, to return to yourself. Your deeper life is waiting. Your truer voice is calling. Your real self is ready. Step forward.